It has been an awesome, 3 days, kind of, sort of? Friday night till now. It's been so great. Some of you are still asking me, even after the break. I kind of made it clear in our last session together, but people are still asking me, what's with this conference? It's so different. What's with all these speakers? Who are these people? They're the best in what God has gifted them with. And it's our heart's desire that at these critical days in which you and I live, I wish sometimes, I know that for those of you who attend Calvary here, I can be pretty honest, I guess, about things, but even still, you'll hold back a little bit. This is our attempt to go about preparing you for the days ahead should the Lord tarry. I was born and raised at Calvary Costa Mesa. I got saved in 1977. Pastor Chuck would say, we could be in heaven in 77. And then when we came into 78, he said, it could be great in 78. And then it came into 79, and he said, it could be fine in 79. Always looking forward to the coming of the Lord. I thank God that my Bible teaches me that in 2 Timothy 4, when Paul the Apostle had lived his life, it was then and only then when the Lord had showed him that he was going to die for his faith. He said that the Lord had laid up for him a crown of righteousness. That's a lot of faith, by the way. Paul's head was going to roll. But he didn't care about that in the physical realm because he said, I thank God he's laid up for me a crown of righteousness. And not only for me only, but for all those who have loved his appearing. The first time Paul ever used the coming of the Lord in the past tense, that he was going to miss that. Because he lived, he said things like, we who are alive and remain shall be caught up to meet the Lord in the air. That's the hope of every believer. If the Lord doesn't come back, then you need to hear, and you needed to hear from these speakers to be prepared. We need to be ready. We thank God that currently in America we can gather together in freedom publicly. Personally, I don't think it's going to be like that for long for the true church. Someone approached me today about some of the information we had available for people to get involved and understand about who's running for office and what you can or cannot do about that. Pastor, don't you think that you should stay out of those kinds of things? No, I do not think. In fact, that's how we got into a lot of problems. We stayed out. But even still, the church has sat too quiet for too long, and the graciousness of God, he's forcing us into a time of growing up, just like any good parent will do to his kids. It's time for us to grow up, and sometimes, like this morning, you hear things that challenge your normal thinking that's comfortable, and it makes you look harder. And so we need to do that like never before. And when this conference comes to an end with Walid, you're going to be going back to your states and to your churches, and a couple of friends from Canada heading back. And it is important for you to be the salt and the light that God has called you to be, no longer hiding anymore. You can't do that. Your friends, your family members, your neighbors need you to take a stand. See, Jack, they're going to hate me. They're going to think I'm a fool. We heard it this morning. If you're going to be a lamb belonging to the Lord, there's going to be wolves in your life. But we are commanded to be salt and light. And I thank God for the testimony and for the witness of Walid Shoebat. And I also want to have Chuck Missler stand, because Chuck, just stand. Let us say thank you to you. Just stand. All of your years of faithfulness, God bless you. Chuck Missler, Chuck Smith, Dr. David Hawking, and Dr. John Wolveridge shaped my Christianity, and I'm grateful. Thanks. Here's the rules for tonight. Walid Shoebat, you have 1 hour. After 1 hour, we have a 10-minute break to go to the bathroom, to catch our thoughts. and you come back for another hour. And and then I think after that, if you're willing, questions and answers, you're a brave man. Is that fine with you? Please give a warm welcome again to Walid Shoebat.
Thank you. I thought at first it was 1 hour. That was it. It was the plans were changed. You know what I was saying? I'll kill you. You know that new cartoonic thing? I'll kill you. That little Ahmed skeleton. Oh, good. I got the marker. You know, he was talking about Brother Chuck Smith. You know, I remember in 79, 80, I walked into Chuck Smith's church as a Muslim in Costa Mesa. We just first started over there in that church. I remember the guy was singing "There's Nobody Like Jesus." And he was saying, "Is Muhammad like Jesus?" He was singing a rock and roll song. "Is Gandhi like Jesus?" And you know, as soon as I heard "Is Muhammad like Jesus," I got offended and I walked out. I said, "I'll never walk into those Christian churches again." I vowed I'll never walk in a church again. I made a vow to Allah that I'll never walk in a church again. And look at me. Allah didn't keep the promise to protect me from the churches. So I blame Allah. And I also want to thank Brother Chuck Missler. I was in a conference with Brother Chuck Missler, and I was concerned, to be honest, going to speak at that conference because his was a conference, probably the second time I was allowed to talk about Bible prophecy. And I said, how will they receive it? You know, Chuck Missler might not like me talking about maybe some different adjustment of our theories regarding the ends of times. They might, you know, kind of close the door in my face and I'll be kind of ousted out and be pointed at, you know, he's a strange guy with a strange interpretations. You know, you worry. You sweat blood. And then I went to the conference and he was so open. It's like, no big deal, Walid, no problem. You're wrong, we accept you. He tells me he agrees with me, but I don't know. Americans have a way of saying things, you know. Because I learned very quickly when I came to America. I mean, I was, you know, sometimes inviting Americans to our home, you know, introducing them to some of our foreign dishes. And I remember the first time I invited Americans, and after they finished eating, the first thing, how did you like it? And the first thing that came out of their mouth, they said, it was interesting. So I went to my wife, I says, they loved it. They thought it was interesting, sort of like intellectual dish. They just loved it. Finally, I learned what the word interesting meant. And I was crushed and hurt. Americans speak with forked tongue. But when I read the Bible, I began to also learn that the Americans really look at terminologies in the scripture and they don't get it. So like, you know, maybe I want to go over some parts of the Bible or some allegorical way of how the West thinks. In all right, where are the pieces of the notes? Go. Page 1. I got 2 hours. That's why I'm doing this, you see.